This is Money Motivation and Mike, and I'm your host, Michael Wainwright. In charge of all the controls is audio engineer and my favorite person, Jason Wright.
All right, all right.
Yes, sir. And hello to you, world. This is the show that will change your life. You can contact us at info@mx3.vip and find all of our other content at mx3.vip or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@MX3 Podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our new content, which comes out every Monday morning around 9 o'clock. Now, what I should have said there, Jason, is that you are my favorite person in this room. You're my favorite business partner on the show.
Wouldn't that make me the your least favorite as well?
Because I was just thinking about all the people that I've told that are my favorite person. So they're listening and watching, and we don't want to get them all excited.
Well, you just put this out to 41,000 subscribers, so there you go.
41,072 subscribers.
That's right.
On the YouTube channel. So apologies to the other 41,071 people that are out there. I'd assume you're a subscriber, Jason.
I am.
Thank you. Thank you. We're working on our numbers for us. As you've already touched on there, a couple of days from the time this show will be broadcast was a big day in the world. June the 6th, 1944, D-Day, invasion of Normandy, the 80th anniversary. So I thought, because of how much that time meant to the United States of America, and due to the fact that our General Dwight David Eisenhower, is from Denison, Texas, which is the home of Money, Motivation, and Mike, and the fact that he was born here, as well as was I. His house still stands here, and a parade after the war, and I believe it was in 1945, the parade, had Dwight Eisenhower in Denison, Texas, to do a parade going through downtown Denison, which was a tremendously large city at that time. Matter of fact, Denison, Texas was the largest city in the state of Texas in the year 1900. Basically the first city coming out of the north that you would come into. Also big railroad town. So it was one of your first depots of where you'd come into, which is also known as the Katy Depot, which is only about a mile from President Eisenhower's birthplace. And then the parade, and then in the mid-60s, Denison built a new high school, the DISD, and they named the auditorium Eisenhower Auditorium. So there you go with that. Susie Nixon Eisenhower, who was Richard Nixon's daughter, still comes to town on a frequent occasion. So Richard Nixon's daughter married Dwight Eisenhower's grandson. And that's how she became Susie Nixon Eisenhower. Still alive. Comes to Denison, Texas occasionally to talk about the great Dwight David Eisenhower. And we're obviously very proud of that. But the D-Day operation of June the 6th, 1944 brought together the land, the air, and the sea forces of the Allied armies in what became known as the largest invasion in military history. Now, who all was involved? Now, when it started out, there were 9 countries on one side, known as the Allies, and 1 country on the other, Germany. Germany was obviously ran by one of the biggest monsters in the history of this world, Adolf Hitler. And with that, and the Holocaust, et cetera, I don't even want to do an episode on Adolf Hitler, Jason. We might do one on World War II sometime, because today we're just focusing on Normandy Beach and crossing that English Channel, etc. But on the other side, as of June 6, 1944, when the 5 Allied beaches of Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword were invaded, there were 9 countries: the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, France, Australia, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Netherlands, and Norway, all a part of this invasion. So, continuing on with the overview of what happened. The operation was given the code name of Overlord. Delivered 5 naval assault divisions to the beaches of Normandy, France, the beaches which I've already named, the 5, and we'll talk about those momentarily as well. The invasion force included 7,000 ships and landing craft manned by 195,000 naval personnel from 8 Allied countries. I'm not sure which one would not have part of a navy, but there were 9 countries that started the invasion. These 195,000, almost 133,000 troops from the United States, the British Commonwealth, and their allies landed on D-Day. Casualties from these countries during the landing numbered 10,300 that day. And on that day, the U.S. lost 2,499 paratroopers on the exact day of D-Day, along with 15 of the 16 commanders of the infantries were killed or wounded on this particular same day. By June 30th, which would be 24 days later, over 850,000 men, 148,000 vehicles, 570,000 tons of supplies had landed on the Normandy shores. Fighting by the brave soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied forces on the Western Front and Russian forces on the Eastern Front led to the defeat of the German Nazi forces. On May the 7th, 1945, General German Adolf Hitler signed an unconditional surrender at the reins of France. Order of the day of June the 6th, 1944. General Eisenhower, who also, each one of these countries had their own commanders and leaders. But the man who was in charge of basically overseeing all of the situation and helping the commanders and taking charge at the table along those ways was, once again, General Eisenhower. He would break a quick end to the war, which is obvious in the message of the troops of the Allied forces on the morning of that invasion, which, by the way, happened at 1500 hours, which was 15 minutes after midnight, is when the invasion started. And actually, the planning of the invasion started in 1943. In the months leading up to the invasion, the Allies basically was coming up with military deception to come in and deceive the Germans so that they could go in and obviously claim victory and go with the things that we know of today, the background. After the German army invaded the Soviet Union in June of 1941, the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin, began pressing his new allies for creation of a second front in the Western Europe. In late 1942, the Soviet Union and the United States of America made a joint announcement that a full understanding was reached with regard to the urgent task of creating a second front in Europe in 1942. Now, however, the British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, who we all have known of for a long time, he postponed the promised invasion, as even with the U.S. help, the Allies he felt they did not have adequate forces for such an activity. So that is why the invasion. And also, most people don't know, Jason, that the Normandy Beach invasion was actually supposed to happen on June the 5th, not June the 6th. June the 5th came along, and the weather was bad. So they delayed. They were looking for, first of all, a full moon so they'd have plenty of light. But it determined that the conditions involving the phase of the moon, the tide, the time of the day, that would be satisfactory. And there's only a few days in the month. The full moon was desired, obviously, for the illumination of the aircraft pilots. And, you know, the visibility and stuff and the high technology that we have today, we didn't necessarily have all that back in 1945. The full moon, desirable. And like I say, there was very, very bad weather, the storms. And if they had not been able to attack on June the 6th, they would have had to wait basically another month before they could go at it again with all of this meteorology stuff that all the ones that were involved in that had made. And, you know, they wanted to come in before dawn. They wanted low to high tide in between. Knew the tide was coming. And of course, all this would improve the visibility of the obstacles of the beach while bringing the men onto the beaches. And like I say, Eisenhower had tentatively selected June 5th as the date of the assault. But by June the 4th, they had determined that it was not going to happen on June the 5th. And fortunately, the weather cleared, and on June the 6th, as I say, 1500 hours, the invasion took place. The Germans were not ready. They thought that it would take a little bit longer. They knew that there was going to be an invasion, but they had not prepared for what was to come about. And as a matter of fact, the German reaction to Operation Overlord was slow and confused. The weather conditions on June 6th, even though favorable for the Allies, it was still poor, which was part of the decision the Germans had made, that they did not believe that the Allies would be attacking during that time and thought that they had plenty of time to do other things. Many senior commanders were not at their post, and they had convinced Adolf Hitler that Normandy invasion was to be delayed, and they actually thought there would be a bigger attack at another place, and not one of the five areas that had already been identified by the Allies. Also, throughout this process, obviously the commanders, the generals, stay up wee hours of the morning all the time. There's no such thing as time to go to bed during these times. But nevertheless, Hitler, very exhausted from all of the situation that's going on and trying to figure out what was happening, had given strict orders on June the 5th to not wake him up the next morning. And Hitler had actually slept in. And once again, strict orders: do not get up, Adolf Hitler. He didn't get up till the late morning. Got to think about, the Allies had already been in business for 10 to 12 hours before Hitler even knew anything that was going on. So during this particular time, now I want to go back here and I want to talk about Omaha Beach, which obviously was the biggest beach at the time that was part of the battle. Now, the names of both Omaha and Utah were suggested by Omar Bradley as two privates fitting out the London headquarters for the United States were from Omaha, Nebraska, and Provo, Utah. That's the reason we have Omaha and Utah. Two guys sitting basically in the headquarters in London. That's the cities they were from, and that's how two of your 5 territories on the beaches were named. Something as simple as that. And now, how much time do we spend on trying to figure out what we're going to do and name something, et cetera, et cetera? Now, Paris, you're talking about Germany, and of course France, and the invasion, and the Germans being involved all over the territory of France. Why was Paris not destroyed? Because Hitler had given instruction that he wanted Paris destroyed. The reason Hitler ended up not destroying Paris, France, is because he considered it to have too great a value, culturally and historically, to risk its destruction. So, in his eyes, France is going to become Germany. And as we know today, probably right behind New York City, Paris, France is the other second biggest city that people talk about on a regular basis. Most people want to go to New York. Most people want to go to Paris. Now, why did Japan, as I said, Japan joined later on? And the reason being is because they were faced with a severe shortage of oil and other natural resources, and driven by the ambition to displace the United States as the dominant Pacific power. Japan decided to attack the United States and British forces in Asia and seize the resources of Southeast Asia. So that's why Japan. Now, when I told you these original countries that got involved, I did not mention Italy, but Italy was a part of the Allies, and they switched sides. Italy wanted to gain the territory of Turkey and Africa, but they didn't get what they wanted at the end of World War I. Also, they were unhappy with the Treaty of Versailles. They thought that injustice had been done to them, so it joined the side of Japan and Germany to get its territory back as promised by Adolf Hitler. Now, remember, the invasion here going on in 1944, and there were several territories that were attacked in the previous years of the war, which I believe started around 1941, Jason. Is that correct? The actual war itself?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, somewhere in that time. Okay. Most people don't know that on July the 19th of 1943, the United States Army Air Forces flew over Rome and dropped 9,125 bombs on that city, with 690 aircraft, as I say, from the U.S. Air Force, just a year before the invasion. But Italy still joined the Allies, and of course they probably did not care for being attacked by the U.S. a year before, and it was easy for them to switch their situation to go over to the German side. Now, why do we call it D-Day?
Let's correct ourselves on the date here.
Yes.
September 1st, 1939.
Okay.
Was when it officially started.
When it officially started.
That is when Germany invaded Poland.
It seemed like, I guess, where I have read and looked into some things, it really started getting really exciting in 1941. Maybe that's when all the attacks and other stuff started happening, when other countries were joining forces. Nevertheless, 1939. And
now we joined in 41.
All right, maybe that's where I'm going with that. Fantastic. Hey, so that's when the war really started, when the United States showed up.
For us, right? Yeah.
So 41 meant something. Nevertheless, the D, why do they call it D-Day? The D stands for day, meaning it's actually short for day. That's actually what it was called, day. Now, that has no catchiness to it, so they called it D-Day. Now, before the Allied had attacked in June of 1944, there would have been many other D-Days. However, it was so iconic that it came to be known solely as referring to the beginning of Operation Overlord, which the official D-Day comes into play. So there you have that. Now let's go back over here and let's look at these 5 areas of the beach that were attacked. And these 5 areas, Jason, it's stretched almost 50 miles. You can go to a map of the beaches on the first day and you can see exactly how all that came about. And we've all seen the pictures of what I call the boats coming up and the back gate flopping down and the soldiers running out into the assault and running on to the beaches. A couple of those that I wanted to point out, first of all, would have been Utah Beach. And that was the area that was defended by two of our battalions. There was a member of the 8th Infantry, and this particular land we did not get to until 6:30 in the morning. And the landing craft was pushed to the south by strong currents. We were virtually 2,000 yards from the intended landing zone. So this site turned out to be better, as there was only one strong point nearby, rather than two in the bombers that had on and some of the other beaches. So, in addition to the strong currents that had washed, had done considerable damage and washed ashore many of our underwater obstacles, the assistant commander of the 4th Infantry Division, General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., the first senior officer ashore, made the decision to start the war from right there, and ordered further landings to be rerouted. Now, he is the son of the former president. Is that correct, Jason?
That is correct.
And I did not know that until doing my research for this episode, that was the case. Now, moving over to Omaha Beach. Omaha, the most heavily defended beach, was assigned to the 1st Infantry Division and the 29th Infantry Division. And they faced the 352nd Infantry Division rather than expected a single regiment. Strong currents forced many landing craft east of their intended positions and caused them to be delayed. For fear of hitting the craft, the landing craft, U.S. bombers delayed releasing their loads, and as a result, most of the beach's obstacles at Omaha remained undamaged when the men came ashore. So they wanted to go down, destroy, then the men's come ashore. Many of the landing craft ran aground on sandbars, and the men had to wade up to 100 meters in water up to their necks while under fire. I mean, can you imagine that? Standing, you got water up to your neck, you got your gun over your head, trying to shoot to get to the beach. And obviously with all this, we worried about the moon, we worried about the weather, but we didn't check on the sandbars that are coming up on the beaches that stopped our landing gear. Quite interesting. Many of the landing gear obviously stayed right there, and in spite of the rough seas, the tanks of two companies dropped 5,000 yards ashore, and 32 flooded, sank to the ground. 27 of the 32, excuse me, of our tanks flooded, went to the ground. Loss of 33 crew. That's almost like there's only one on each one of them. I guess everybody else was out fighting. Some tanks were disabled on the beach. They continued to provide covering fire until ammunition ran out and they were swamped by the rising tide. So you're behind this particular piece of equipment. And in essence, it turned out to be your shelter. So you just weren't running onto the beach, frankly, naked. And then the water gets you. Like I said, the casualties are around 2,000, and the men were subjected to fire from the cliffs above. Problems clearing the beach obstacles, led to the beachmaster calling a halt to further landings of vehicles at 8:30 that morning. A group of destroyers arrived around this time to provide fire support by landing, so landings could resume. Exit from the beach was only possible via heavily defended gullies. So they had to get into gullies that had been created by the ocean and washed ashore to go up through there. Now, 600 men had reached the ground in the higher day, and by noon, fire took its toll on the Germans, and they started to run out of ammunition. And the Americans were able to clear some lanes on the beaches. And as they started clearing the gullies and the enemy defenses, so the vehicles could move off the beach and into more of France. So this was all accomplished, and where they were actually active on the ground by June the 9th. Those are two of the beaches. And as we know about, we could go on and on and on and on about this, but the aftermath of the Normandy invasion is that the Normandy landings were the largest seaboard invasion in history, with nearly 5,000 landings and assault craft, 289 escort vessels, and 277 minesweepers participating. Nearly 160,000 troops crossed the English Channel on D-Day, with 875,000 men disembarking by the end of June. Allied casualties for the first day were at least 10,000. 4,414 were confirmed. The Germans had up to 9,000 casualties. The Germans never achieved Hitler's stated aim of throwing the Allies back into the sea on D-Day or any time thereafter. Thank you, Jesus, for that. And this basically started the downfall of the Nazis and the German Supreme Commander of Adolf Hitler, who, I don't want to call him fascinating, but he was a different dude. He was a different individual who had some very, very ugly thoughts that went through his brain. And unfortunately, some of those things he brought to action, such as the Holocaust. Once again, on Money, Motivation, and Mike, we continue to try to bring you things that we feel are important. And it seems like, Jason, over the last couple of months, we've had some anniversaries, maybe some awful anniversaries, such as D-Day, and another one that is coming up here in the coming weeks. And I have already started to prepare for this. And I am trying to decide right now if it should be more than one episode. And I believe it's going to. And these are the murders in June of 1994 of Nicole Brown Simpson and her buddy that most people believe were at the hands of O.J. Simpson, who was later found guilty in a civil suit in 1996, and then went to jail for supposedly stealing back his own memorabilia and walking into a hotel room in Las Vegas and with guns, and the people in that room were unarmed, and several felonies were committed. Now, most people would say, and when I say most people, most of your legal authorities would say that the other side had no guns. Nobody was killed. Nobody was apprehended or kidnapped. They basically got their stuff. No one was ever touched, and they left. And for that, O.J. Simpson got 150 months. Most people believe in the legal system that at the most that was a 2-year sentence if you went that far. Now, he had never done any of those type of acts before. Obviously, public opinion is that he murdered 2 individuals, and a civil suit a couple years later found him to do that. But a lot of people think that judge who handed out the sentence come down hard on him for his past performance. Dating back to June of 1994. So we're coming up on that. And Ronald Goldman, that was the name that was slipping me a while ago. I believe we're going to touch on that because I could tell you exactly where I was the day of the white Bronco chase going through southern LA, headed to OJ's house. And I can tell you where I was watching the day that the trial ended and the verdict was handed out. It was one of the sickest days that I can remember of being an American citizen. Whether you thought he was guilty or whether you thought he was innocent. Everybody had an opinion. And the people who thought he was innocent or wanted him to be innocent were all cheering and happy and frankly just rejoiced. And the people who thought he was guilty were basically numb. And you saw, in my eyes, more division by that decision than frankly any other decision that I can ever think of in my 55 years of life. Now, as far as D-Day goes, so I'm thinking about that. We're going to do that episode. And we're probably going to get into some controversial topics on that episode because the defense team did play the race card. And the defense team's race card was orchestrated by their white attorney. So we're all over the board on that deal. But Johnny Cochran became a legend from that trial. And we're gonna probably do at least 2 episodes because I think it has to be broken up into 2 episodes. I have already created a lot of information, but going back to D-Day in Normandy Beach and the 80 years of what has happened since that time, and like I say, it was a great day, but it was also a bad day. Conflicts usually get resolved during war, but a lot of casualties come along with that as well. I'm going to leave that last note there and a little something I'm proud of is my daughter, who was a student ambassador in 6th grade. She was a student ambassador for the United States to the countries of England and France. And she got to spend 3 weeks in that area. And one night on a ferry boat that obviously had sleeping quarters, they got to float across the English Channel from England and land on Normandy Beach and study D-Day. So I'm very proud that she got that history and probably could have come on this show and done a better job than what I have. But as always, Money Motivation Mike, we continue to try to strive and thrive towards topics that you like and things that you want to hear. And our numbers show that the information that we continue to put out on the wavelengths seems to be something that you're attracted to. So please continue to contact us, info@mx3.vip, and you can find all of our content at mx3.vip or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/MX3 Podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our new content, which comes out around every Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Now, I said contact us at info@mx3.vip. Jason, you remember here a couple of weeks ago, we did an episode on how children are not earning as much money as their parents.
Mm-hmm.
I have had several people comment on that subject, and they were not very favorable with my thoughts and comments on what's going on with the young people. As a matter of fact, I was told to wake up and get with the real world by one, it was actually a listener on the podcast side. I guess what he meant was, and sir, you feel free to email me back, you feel free to comment on what I'm about to tell you. I guess I need to get acclimated to the fact that people, a lot of youngsters, a lot of adults, 30 years and younger, it's just they're entitled to be lazy. I guess I just need to get prepared to realize that may be the way it is until the day I die. So when I need to wake up, I guess that's what I need to wake up to, is this is how it is, dude. And you're either going to live with it or you're not. So when you go to the store and you buy something, you need to be prepared for the fact that they don't know how to make change back to you. If that machine breaks down, it's an unfortunate situation for you because they don't know what to do. So when your bill is $8.56 and you give them a $10 bill and 56 cents, and you see the smoke come out of their ears and their eyes and their nose, you just have to be prepared to deal with that. Because that's usually when they have to call a manager and want to know why you overpaid by $2. I understand you, sir. Continue to send me the emails and I will continue to respond. And who knows? If you send me enough, I just may have you on the show here as a special guest. We haven't had a guest in a while, Jason. So, for everyone who's been a part of this show of Money, Motivation, and Mike, continue to live your life the right way.